going to happen. I actually moved the stairs to that not to happen, but I failed obviously miserably, like our audio failed. I mean, you may have recognized the spot if you're old enough, like I. That was in '84 when Apple introduced the Macintosh, and they said, in 1984 won't be like 1984. I think they had IBM on their mind, right, when this was this dystopian thing. Now, IBM looks like the good guy if you look into what's going on now. So the enemy sort of has changed. Next year we're going to have the 30th anniversary of 1984, which is also interesting when you think back, 30 years, right? And I remember the times I was just finishing high school in 1984. And I was really scared about the world that we were getting into. We had something going on in Germany called the Volkszählung, which was counting people. Can you believe this? And they hired all these poor people that had to walk up and knock doors, right? And fill in a form, right? Which was like, do you exist? When were you born? What's your name, right? And people were really upset that the government had this crazy idea of getting to that data. 1984 was also an interesting date when it comes to email, because in the famous city of Karlsruhe, see many people from Karlsruhe. I'm not sure why that is, Oliver. You have an idea why there's so many people from Karlsruhe? Well, many of the 101 people are from Karlsruhe, and they have much better weather than Hamburg, I can tell you. So it's a good reason to go there. Maybe our next summit is in Karlsruhe, maybe not. Let's see. We'll figure it out. In 1984, a guy by the name of Werner Zorn. Zorn is German for anchor, but that has nothing to do with it. I don't know. That is connected or convinced politicians and university professors to connect two networks. One was the CSNet from the US, the Computer Sciences Network, and the other one was the DFN, the Deutsche Forschungsnetzwerk, which is sort of the same thing as CSNet. And what happened in 1984 is that the first email was sent from the US, from CSNet to Germany, to the DFN, to the University of Karlsruhe. And it said, "Willkommen to CSNet." We don't know what the second email was. It was probably spam, right? We don't know. The CSNet eventually turned into the internet. ARPANET, CSNet, internet, that's sort of a progression of things. But really that didn't do it yet. I mean, if some smart university professor connects two networks, it's nice, right? But the internet did something else. And why did it? Why do we, what we now call the internet, in a way we kind of confuse this with the web most of the time. And really only a few protocols have survived from the internet days into today. One of them is mail. It's that old, it's terribly old. This is why it's so prone to what Phil was talking about. It wasn't really designed to be secure. Nobody really cared because it was secure because only 3 people in the world were using it. Right? And now something happened that makes us all use it. So why did that happen? What happened? What did happen is a new ecosystem was created. And this ecosystem was open to everybody to participate. If stuff is open and everybody can participate, you're really taking down barriers of participation. So any little geek in Helsinki, right, can come up with their own operating system and has a distribution channel, can come up with their own email server and has a distribution system. And actually has the distribution system itself is the collaboration system, and it's also the deployment system. And it's all the same technology all over the place, available to everyone. Now, why is it available to everyone? Because it is open. All the protocols in the internet. I mean, just imagine, if 1984, like Apple, was showing it to us, would have really happened. What would have, that would have been, and I'm sorry, IBM colleagues, that's the old IBM, not the new IBM, I know that. So, the old IBM had a protocol called SNA. And it was for mainframes. And they had a network called Token Ring. And the Token Ring network card was in the vicinity of $1,000, which is probably more like a small car today, right? They were really expensive. SNA was an old protocol for mainframes to talk to their terminals, right? And there was a terminal protocol on top of that called 3270. So if IBM would have had it their way, we would have a Token Ring SNA internet. And guess what? Nobody would be using it, right? And we had no World Wide Web. So instead, open technologies like TCP/IP, HTTP, HTML, and software, open source software like Linux, Apache, MySQL, Dovecot, these things made the internet happen. And you guys turned that into a business. You use that stuff to build an industry. You built the freaking internet. I mean, this is pretty cool. and you're making a lot of money. I mean, you can afford, renting boats, not so bad. So we do rent boats, we have nice parties, we have DJs and great bands coming up, by the way, but I'm not going to tell you which one, because we've created an industry that everybody could participate in. The foundation of everything we're talking about today is, that open internet. Now, going back to what Phil was talking about, is becoming sort of a little scary. Why is it? Because we're now noticing, okay, this open, wonderful internet is being used to spy upon us. I mean, we Germans had our fair share of being spied upon, right? Many of you are old enough, and some of you I know are sort of cross-border people. Like I was born in East Germany. I got lucky because I got out in '74 when I was 10 years old to move on to the West and sort of get a different perspective on things. But you all know, that we had things like the Gestapo with the Nazis, which was not so pleasant to many people. We had the KGB in Russia and the Soviet Union, which was not so pleasant. We had something called the Stasi in East Germany, the Staatssicherheitsdienst, which is pretty much what NSA means, right? That's what it does. The only difference being that the Stasi not very secretly spied on their own people. And Phil is saying, no, actually, the NSA is supposed to be spying on everybody except the Americans, so on us, right? Which is kind of okay, he's also saying, because, at least they can't knock on your door, he thinks, right? They can send a drone over, but that's a different story. These guys. So in a way, this democracy thing is already in peril, and I think that's what Phil is pointing to. Having those tools and having a secret service may be okay, but if they start using it in an undemocratic way, then it's not okay and really dangerous. And we've had our share. This is a great actor. Unfortunately, he died. Ulrich Mühe. I think he even won an Oscar for that role. A movie called Das Leben der Anderen, The Life of Others. If you haven't seen that movie, go get it. Because that gets you an idea. That's sort of like the dystopian future that we might get into, only that this poor guy just had very poor technology, right? This whole movie is about him renting the apartment on the other side of the street, using his goggles to, watch, and this sort of thing to listen, and the NSA today goes like, oh geez, this is just awful, they just sit in their bunkers and watch us all the time. And they're actually recording all the data all the time. That the court order that they still need from this secret court that they have to get to the data only means that they have to get this order to be able to query the data they already have. That's a pretty low hurdle, right? You could go like, you know what, I want to know, right? Because I got the data, so I do it. So this type of future is probably not what we're trying to get into. And I'll sort of talk about the business component, but what does that mean to us? To me it means I'm doing all this because I want to continue to create the future that we have started with the internet as an industry. And we want this to be a thriving marketplace that everybody can participate. And oh, by the way, we'll also take care of the personal freedom that's involved in that. Right? So there is a high intrinsic motivation also from a business perspective to do that. So I don't want you all to become sort of good people doing stuff for the good cause, right? We all need to make money. But why not, while we're making money, do something for the good cause, right? This is sort of a thing that would motivate me too. Right? We can make money, have fun with the technology, do something good, and sort of develop this internet that we like further into something that we can continue to like. Now, but let's look at what the internet has really done. We had a couple of industries before the internet that were fat and happy, like content creation, print media. Right? This industry has been growing over a long period of time, and except for very few, Andre, right, Heise, for example, that is still around and still doing well, many are in trouble. And now we see the internet magnates buying newspapers, which is kind of interesting, coming full circle. But also the software industry, the same is going on inside the software industry. Because a lot of software is not being bought and installed in machines anymore, but instead we use our web browser to simply use it as a service. Right? And use it when we need it, pay it when we need it, and actually prices are going down, and you're part of that industry that does that. Right? You're delivering software via the internet to end users. And this way end users don't buy software anymore, so if you are a software company, right, and you may recognize where the soft is coming from, you're either transforming your business or you're going to be out of business, and a lot of people are missing that. Telecommunications. I remember the times, it was about 8 years ago, when the wireless carriers really owned the phone. So when you bought a Vodafone phone, it had all the Vodafone software. I'll say politely, it was probably rather crapware sometimes on the phone, but still it was a Vodafone experience controlled by Vodafone or E+, right? You guys, you ran the show, right? It was yours. And then, somebody came by, used the power of the cloud device synchronization to sort of steal that away in a very smart way, and I'll talk about this. Hardware, same thing. We see very cool hardware here, like HP, if you haven't already looked at the Moonshot servers they got here. Really cool, and you need that stuff, right? You're putting it all in your data centers. But companies buy less and less hardware. We buy less and less PCs because we use tablets. And so this whole hardware industry is sort of going down. So what's happening is this. We're taking the air out of this fat and happy balloons, right? And push the business into the cloud. So for example, for print, I think the statistics are, the past 10 years, they've lost half of their business. To the internet. It doesn't mean it's like a stock exchange. It doesn't mean that that amount of money has moved elsewhere. You say that if somebody loses money on the stock exchange, somebody makes it. It's not true. It's not true. You're just setting a new price, and everybody may have lost, right, or won. Same for news. It's not that all the advertisement from print went into the internet, but the internet advertising went through the roof, and you see very rich companies with very good cash flow just from that. But same for software. We see a declining software industry, and we see a quickly growing software as a service industry that has average growth rates of anything between 25 and 50%, depending on who you believe when you read the statistics. We are, as Open-Xchange, growing at that pace. Telecommunications, and they have lost control. They may be dumped down to pipes, wireless pipes or wired pipes, and of course then you get into price competition, and then you have a downward spiral. And you all know that if you're a telco, and you're fighting that, right, to win a new life. But the over-the-top internet companies have really stolen the business, right? They are controlling the customers. So there's a couple of interesting stories that I really like, because we've been sort of preaching to the choir saying, guys, you really need to retain control over your customers. And the only way to do that is to run services that you manage and that you control, and that sort of increase the customer retention and create customer engagement, because you just lost it big time. When now somebody buys, now I take T-Mobile, I'm not picking on any of the carriers. If you take a T-Mobile or an AT&T iPhone, what are you buying? Are you buying an AT&T iPhone? No, you're not. You're buying an Apple iPhone. What is the first thing you do? You create an Apple ID. And what's the next thing you do? You have an Apple email account, you have an iTunes account, right? Apple. And I mean, what have you done? You've sold the phone and you give the money to Apple because that's the deal, right? People want it, so you have to sell it. So you're in a conundrum. And then, but people really compare your prices because that same Apple phone is also available from all your competitors. So now it's really about price of the data service, right? That's what the phone is about. And that's what telcos are being reduced to, and this is why business goes away. You could say, no, but we have services. Yes, like text messaging, right? Ha, ha, ha. Right? iMessage, WhatsApp, bye-bye, revenue, right? Bzzzt. Not nice. So what else? Let me think. I don't know. Voice. I know many people that don't even know that they can use their smartphones to place a call. It's not what it's really used for. Hardware, same thing, right? I mean, why would you want to buy hardware as a consumer? You buy devices, gadgets, right? So I buy 3 phones and 5 tablets and 2 computers, and then have them all in the same place. But that money goes to who? To Apple and Samsung, right? And all the rest doesn't seem to be making a lot of money out of these devices anymore. And the backend infrastructure is run by you guys. You are smart. You buy the cheapest hardware you can get and turn it into a data center that you use to cater your services, which is great. It is wonderful. So what's the cloud? What's the cloud doing? The cloud is using what we've built as the internet, all this open technology that we've done as a foundation, to now turn infrastructure, platform, software, content into a service, right? And you sell on either of these, and you're living on maybe one or many of these slices, generating a business. But things have changed still. Some things are totally different from the way we've built the internet. Because if you look into the cloud industry, you'll notice a huge difference. Who controls the industry? We have some very large players that have built the internet and that are based on these open technologies. And many of them are here today. It's you hosting companies, it's you ISPs, you carriers that have built the infrastructure, that have built the services. But who are the very big players in cloud? It's only 5 or 6, right? And who are they? It's Apple, mentioned that before, it's Microsoft, it's Google, it's Facebook, it's Amazon. Right? And then there is a couple of companies that are big enough But it makes me wonder why they're not playing big enough yet. And I have to look to a colleague from IBM again, right? Where is IBM on that equation? And he's in charge of the cloud business in Germany, in the Germanic countries. So he's controlling quite a significant business dimension, data. There is very large companies around that deal with this stuff, HP. They're all here, talk to them. They're building cloud services. But the real dominating companies when it comes to revenues and size and growth in this market are the 5 that I mentioned before. But what do? Let's analyze what they do. They're creating a stack of services. Let's take Apple, it's the best example. I love Apple because my pockets are full of Apple stuff, right? And whenever a priest walks up stage for an Apple announcement, you know, I'm in front of my computer watching the keynote and ready to fire the buy button, right? We're sort of all that same way. But what are they really doing? And I know a little bit of background because I was involved with a large distributor and reseller for Apple products here in Europe. And they have been going through tough times because of the way Apple approached this market. What have they done? They've created a completely closed ecosystem. There's nobody going to play inside that ecosystem. So end-to-end, from device to service at the very back, is totally controlled by Apple. If you want to get on an Apple device, the only one that's still semi-open is the Mac, based on FreeBSD, right, open source software and stuff. And since a lot of people migrated from Linux to Mac, like I did, because I still had a Unix underneath it, so it was great, and I had a great user experience, which we Linux guys never managed to create. So user experience difficult. So we moved on to Apple because we still had the Unix foundation, which is fun, and you can do all the hacking stuff. But if you look even there, they're sort of closing it down. So if you get a new Mac these days and you're not a geek, you can't install software from the internet anymore. It tells you this is unsafe, you got to go through the Apple Store to get it. If you find the settings somewhere, you can switch that off, but Mac OS 11 will probably get rid of that switch, right? And then you can only go through the Apple Store. On the iPhone, iPad, it's already over, right? They totally control the flow of apps and software. They make money on that, which is okay, right? They should make money. But they tell us what kind of software can make it to the platform. And just think of it from a cultural perspective, right? So if you're coming from the trade press, for example, or the they tell you, oh, no, sorry, this lady is not dressed enough, or this man, right? So you can't publish this on the iPhone. You go like, okay, but we're not in America, sorry, right? This is Europe. Well, I don't care, because it's controlled in America. They even locked down the retail channel, right? Which is also pretty geeky when you think about it. I mean, they said, oh, the buying experience of Apple devices is not good enough, ha, 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 right? No, the margins of the resellers were too high, right? So they open their own Apple stores, and they are like churches, right? And I like, here in Hamburg, there is one. If you haven't been to one, go check it out. It's cool. And, very well-trained staff, very friendly. They really know stuff. So they really improved the retail experience, no doubt about this. They're doing all things very well. The phone is great. Everything is great. But it's a totally locked ecosystem. So you walk into an Apple store to buy an Apple device. You sign up for Apple service. You get an Apple ID. You give them your credit card. That's important, right? And so now where's the market? How do you get in? So what's your business with Apple? Who has business with Apple? Oops, nobody. How comes? Right? So how about Google? That sounds a little more open and friendly. They are not evil, we know that, right? They're not evil at all. Well, they give away their phone operating system for free. That's nice. And it's open source. Right? Kind of open source. Because if you modify it too much, you're out of the ecosystem. Right? Like Amazon, right? They have the deep pockets to modify it enough to make it an Amazon operating system. So if you buy one of the larger Kindles that run on Android, it doesn't really look like Android, and it doesn't have much to do with Android, and it's still a good device. But nobody else does, not even Samsung does. They all put stuff on top of it and fumble around with it, but not too much, because if they would be doing too much, Google just shuts down access to Google Play Store, and then you can't install apps, and then you're toast, right? So it's a pretty controlled ecosystem too. They don't need to make money on that, because the only thing they want is what Apple has also, which is whenever you get an Android phone, they want you to sign up with Google. Right? So you create a Google account, you get Google Mail, you get Google Apps, you get Google Cloud, you get Google this, and you get Google that. So how much business is in there for you? If you're a phone maker, how many phone makers make money with Android phones? One. Samsung. Right? That's it. All others lose money. Not very good business. They still have to pay Microsoft. If you use Android, the only one making money off the operating system is Microsoft, because of wonderful patents, which is another wonderful way to control the industry, which we open source guys like very much dealing with, right? Because it's really good for industry development and so forth. right? Now, so Google doesn't care much because they're saying, okay, the OS is for free anyway, so you know, you can pay a little to Microsoft. It's $10, $15 per device, not so bad. So they're probably making $1 billion already on that. But still, if you look at, you know, where is your play in the Google ecosystem, except for you reselling maybe Google apps and getting a slim margin, it's nowhere. You know, you can't really do business with Google very much. A little more than with Apple because they're not totally closed, but not much. One that does it a little better is Microsoft. You know, they have been a great partner to the industry for a long time. Right? And they've been exclusively going through the channel for a long time. And it took them 30 years to build that channel. And it's been a very successful channel. You know, and everybody in the channel has been making a lot of money. So now something happened, and they changed their mind to say, okay, you know, we got to go direct. What happened? Google happened, and Apple happened, and they go direct. Right? They sell to consumers directly, and they take control of the end user. So Microsoft said we probably should be doing the same thing, right? So now they're starting to lock down their ecosystem. If you look at Office 365, you know, that's like Google Apps. You can resell the service and make a slim margin on that. But you cannot recreate the whole stack that Microsoft is offering as a service. You cannot. You can get pieces, right? You can get Exchange and do hosted Exchange and so forth, as long as they like you to, right? Also the feature set that's inside of hosted Exchange that they allow you to offer to your customers gets heavily played with. So in a way, they're reducing your ability to create competitive products on their own stack, but which in a way sounds logical, right? Because they go direct, they set the end user price, and they sell to you, so they set your purchase price. And some of you are very large and get very good, you know, terms and conditions for buying that stuff, but still, you know, you're in a squeeze, right? The price you can sell it for is defined by Microsoft, the price that you buy it for is defined by Microsoft, and now here's the wiggle room, right? And if they wake up one morning and they feel like they got to compete with Google, they just lower the price like they did. But you're like, oops, right? What now? So here goes your margin, and this is what's going to go on continuously. If Microsoft goes down that route of becoming a hardware and services company, like Mr. Obama decided, and I mean they just bought Nokia, so it seems that they're still going down that path. We know what the end game is going to be, so not so great. Amazon, right? Amazon's goal, and they have large goals, and they have the capabilities to do that, is obviously to be sort of our backend for everything. But if you look at AWS, it's like the American defense budget, right? If you take the American defense budget, the next 9 or 10 countries combined make up the American defense budget. So, you know, Japan, France, Germany, UK, all defense budgets combined is the defense budget of the US. With AWS, you know, AWS, all the first 5 or 6 competitors combined, including Google and Microsoft and all the big players, and surely profit bricks, all of them combined make the revenues of AWS, right? Which is pretty amazing. So you could say they are a clear market leader. There's almost no second, right? And of course they're churning on, and they have, you know, they can do with the price whatever they want, competing with your virtual server offerings and all that stuff that you have. And that's a race to the bottom, right? They got unlimited scale, if you like, right? And they are locking down the ecosystem. I mean, how can you participate in an AWS ecosystem? Not at all. I mean, you can use it if you're on an application layer, but that's it, right? So that's not interesting. So we're creating, you know, coming from the open internet, we now go to a very closed and locked down ecosystem that will simply destroy this market that we're all in, because there's no way for you to participate. And that's not an open market. Also from a consumer perspective, this is not very good, because if you only have one supplier, you know, I'm from East Germany, I know what it means to only have one supplier. And I tell you, it just effing sucks. No, you don't want that, right? You want Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, Afri-Cola, you know, all that, Fritz-Cola, I don't know, but you don't want VEB Cola, you know, Konsum Cola, I don't know what it was called. You know, look at all East German marketing, it's really cool. I mean, it's just amazing. Not that they needed any marketing because the products were not available anyway, right? So what do you do? So that's sort of the picture in my mind that I get, you know, and that reminds me of Poet Muir, you know, spying on his neighbors in a dystopian East Germany, which was pretty much like, not that bad, but almost like, this is North Korea that we saw in the Yapple ad, right? East Germany was not quite North Korea, right? North Korea sort of has an entertainment edge to it, unless you live there, right? You're like, this is really nuts, right? I don't get it. But East Germany was not fun, and it was just not fun. And if you look at this industry that we're building, if that prevails, we're going to have very few offerings, 3, 4, 5 or so, that you may be able to choose from. But have you tried to move from one cloud to the other in those environments? So even if you think it's still choice, right? Yeah, I mean, there's people that are dealing with it, but it's not easy, right? To move from a Microsoft cloud to a Google cloud or from an Apple cloud. I'm now stuck with Apple, right? They got me, right? That's really me, right? They got all my music, my pictures, all my stuff is on Apple. I got all these devices at home, so I can be really cool and play my music on all my speakers I got everywhere. So if I switch my ecosystem now, I got to switch out everything. Right? And then I have to work like a week to get this done. So the hurdles of changing are extremely high, and they're going to get higher and higher and higher. So it's going to be a pretty monopolistic, dystopian future that we're getting into if that's what's going to happen, and you're all going to be out of business. So not a good proposition. We're here to change that, right? We've created the internet. I mean, we've done that. Right? It's an open internet. It's a great place. It's a thriving marketplace. So let's continue to do that, and let's continue to do that with cloud services. Let's just create cloud services that are open. Let's create cloud services that allow people to choose their service provider of trust. This is also important from a security perspective when you think about it. Security is really not so much about technology, and we heard Phil talk about it, because ultimately security has many things that you need to think of, and really security translates into trust of the provider. If you don't trust the provider, if you don't trust your iPhone, like you shouldn't, right? Anything you do on your iPhone is insecure, no matter what you do. But if you have your private key on your iPhone and you type in your password, who tells you that Apple is not logging the keyboard? Who is? You have to use the Apple SDK, you have to go through the Apple process of deploying an app, right? And then the app appears on the App Store and people install it on their app. Do you know what's going on between your app and Apple? You don't, right? And how could you? You don't. So saying, okay, I create a secure service, right, is a risky business. You can do with things like chat and voice that Phil mentioned, very clever, because you simply negotiate a key at the instance that you start the conversation, so it only works for real-time communication. You create the key, you do the communication, you delete the key, right? So anybody sort of taping what you do cannot decrypt it. But that's very hard. Right? That is really, really hard. So you could say that is safe, but it only works for synchronous stuff, not for asynchronous stuff. So very hard to create security unless you trust the provider and the platform that you're using. Now let's begin with the providers themselves, right? Who do you trust? If the service is only available from one provider, and even if you trust the provider at a certain point in time, and now Mr. Snowden wakes up, another revelation, you go like, oops, now I don't anymore, you have no choice to move on. So if we want to create a few rules, let's call them the 4 commandments of trusted cloud services. I like commandments, carved in stone and all that. Sort of an lieu of Mr. Muir to sort of deal with what he was trying to accomplish in East Germany and make it not happen inside cloud services. The first one would be a service that you use must be available from many providers because of the trust issue. Right? You want to be able to switch providers in case you don't trust the provider. You want choice in locality. So let's say you say, okay, I want my service to be in my home country because I trust the legislation in my home country. Or you say, no, I don't trust the legislation in my own country, but I trust the legislation of Switzerland or North Korea. It depends on what you think. It doesn't matter, but you have to have choice. So first, thing must be, and also if you are a provider yourself, make sure that the service that you are providing to create a trusted service is available from others. Sounds strange, right? You say, yeah, but then I have competition. Yes, you've had competition because of the openness of the technologies that you're using to produce your products now. And it has created this marketplace. And competition is very healthy. It creates a thriving marketplace that many participate in. Number 2, now that we have services, and I know Thomas is going to like that, you have to be able, Thomas from Outrigger, he has a service that moves stuff from one cloud to another. Everything into the Open-Xchange based services, of course, but unfortunately also out. But it's not unfortunate, it's good. Because to create trusted services, you must be able to not only choose your provider, but you also must be able to move your data from one provider to another. Not like the Apple scenario that I just described, where it's very hard and I have to do it manually, so I won't move, right? So it's not really a choice that I have, even if there is a comparable service, because I can't move my data, I don't really have choice. So the second parameter, the second commandment is, please make sure that there are tools that enable you to move from one to the other. Now, what about you trusting no one? No provider. You are now a user, a company, whatever, an entity, and you say, I can't really think of a provider currently that I do trust, I only trust myself. So rule number 3 is we must enable people to run the stuff themselves. So pick a service that's available from many providers, make sure you can move from one provider to another, but also make sure that the service that is created with software, obviously, that same software is also available to everyone. And this creates provider choice, because providers are just people installing the software and running it, right? But also creates choice in terms of the end user, right? That can decide, even though it's more expensive, it's hard and all that kind of stuff, but still they have choice to run it themselves. And of course, having the stuff available as software creates choice on the provider side as well, because everybody can create a service based on that software. And then last but not least, it helps. It's not absolutely necessary, but it helps if that software is also available in source code to everyone. Why is that? Because now we've dealt with the trust in the provider, and if you trust no one, you run it yourself. Now, how do we trust the software that we run? How do we know this software really works and does as advertised and doesn't have backdoors, right? In the Apple scenario, we don't know, right? We don't know what's going on because it's a totally closed ecosystem. So the whole toolchain should be open, and you know about open toolchains because you're using them all the time. Right? All your data centers are stuffed with Linux and the whole toolchain, and everything is open. So you know from source code to compile to binary what's going on, and you can actually check that stuff. Right? Open source software or software available as source code, this is really the main argument here. It doesn't need to be a real open source license, but the source code must be available. Phil actually chose such a license for PGP. It wasn't open source in the later years, but the source code was available. And why is that? Because you don't want to trust one software provider, you want to trust sort of the intelligence of the masses, if you like. If that software becomes very popular, a lot of people will be looking at it. I'm not saying it's perfect. There's still going to be the ability to introduce backdoors, but they're much easier to find. And if software really becomes popular, right, a lot of people will be looking at it. And this way, this stuff will be found. Thus, intrinsically, open source software is more secure. So now, if we adhere to these rules, we can create trusted cloud services. And that is a big differentiator for our industry, because we now know, what untrustworthy cloud services are and why they are. We just learned that. We may have known that anyway. Many in the industry are saying, I'm not surprised by the Snowden revelations. Yes, I wasn't surprised by the Snowden revelations, but the extent to which this is going on surprised me a little, I have to say. So now the opportunity for all of us here in this room and in the world is to continue building this open ecosystem of open services to compete against those silos that we have, against the big five, if you like. And I believe that the awareness that these services have a certain quality, and thus the willingness to pay money for that, increases with the revelations that we're getting now. So what is going on is really helping us building that business, because people are willing to pay money for it. I mean, ask people that have built local encrypted services, like, for example, Colab in Switzerland. They have built an encrypted mail service out of Switzerland. Right? They just launched it, very clever. Right? And most of the customers are actually from the US. And they're paying 10 Swiss francs, which is about $150. I'm just kidding, but it will be eventually. Per user per month for plain email service. Right? No frills, except that it's encrypted. So think about this. I mean, creating trusted services, that comply to these rules, and then adding components that people want, like security components. And we got the security guys here. We got Phil here. We got Werner here from GNU PG. We got other people here around that really know about this security thing. And even though you can't create perfect security, you can highly improve what we're doing. And this is much better than doing nothing. And it's a huge business, because a lot of businesses first, because they should be very concerned, and then people later will be moving on to more trusted services for all these reasons that we heard about. And hopefully, I hope, although that's probably a longer shot out, we'll see that also this openness gets down to devices. Right? We don't really have an open source phone yet that you want to use, right? That can compete with what we have in Android or iPhone. But there's great stuff going on. And if you're a mobile carrier, think about this stuff, because an open source phone gives you back control over what you're doing. Right? Not like an iPhone or Android phone. I mean, there's Firefox OS coming and phones based on that. Telefonica is playing with it, I know, and others are. If you're a software maker, think of this as a platform, because those phones need apps, but apps are being catered through the web and can be web apps. They're not locked down, not artificially dumped down like on those phones that want you to create native apps on native SDKs. So there's lots of opportunity around, but start with creating, open stacks up to the layer you want to go, infrastructure, platform, software as a service, content even, but make them open, give users a choice, thus you're creating trustable services, and this will generate a lot of business. We're here to talk about this, right? We have all the major players in this room. We have 21 sponsors, and I thank the sponsors very much, because a lot of the luxury we're enjoying here comes out of their pockets, right? The rest comes out of our pocket, but anyway, and that comes out of the pockets of our investors that I thank very much too, and our customers, right? So we're building a great business and we're just spending the money, right, to be here. The next one is going to even be bigger. You know, my biggest goal is to have a conference like Parallels has, right? Well, it's always in Florida, New Orleans, Las Vegas, so we're going to be Hamburg, Karlsruhe, right, whatever. So maybe I can't compete with the cities, but hopefully with the size. So talk to these guys, look what they got. It is super interesting stuff to build the stack, the products that you can sell to your customers. And again, thanks for coming by, and we're talking and we'll be partying like crazy tonight. Thank you very much.